Doo-doo-dee. It's Nandi!
Hello friends. If you're just seeing this video go live, then we're only a few days away from accessing Kharn the Betrayer, the legendary World Eater's champion. There is a couple of things that I'll break down for you here today. First thing is we'll take a look at the character himself, his kit, and where we might expect him to shine, both in PvP and guild raids. We'll then take a look at how you can unlock him through his legendary release event, the enemies you'll expect to fight, and the changes that we'll see in this release format. It is a long video, so everything is timestamped for your consumption. Without further ado. The models and animation are amazing, and I remain in awe of the art department. Kharn has a few traits shown here. He has the Blessings of Khorne trait that all of the World Eaters faction possess. This means that he'll deal 3% more damage and receive 8% less psychic damage for each unit that was defeated in melee this battle. This stacks up to 8 times, capping out at a 24% damage increase and a 64% psychic damage reduction. Kharn also has the Rapid Assault trait, which gives him 1 bonus movement until he makes an attack. When he does make that attack, it is done with a 25% damage bonus modifier. His final trait is Final Vengeance, which means that when Kharn is just about to die, he unleashes a final attack before dying. The stats on screen are at Diamond 3. I'll take a closer look later on to show you how this compares to other characters in the game. Kharn has a base movement speed of 3, but remember, due to his Rapid Assault trait, this is actually a movement of 4 until Kharn makes his first attack. Kharn only has a melee attack with the new damage type Eviscerate. He deals 4 hits with 50% pierce. Kharn's active ability is fittingly called Kill, Maim, Burn, which I quite enjoyed. This does 3 different types of attacks, all prioritizing the same target until it is killed, and then prioritizing other kills thereafter. Kharn does a melee piercing attack, followed by a 6-hit melee eviscerating attack, and then a plasma attack, which has a 2-hex range. Kharn's passive ability is also, fittingly, called the Betrayer. After performing a normal attack, Kharn immediately makes a second attack against an adjacent enemy, delivering 4 hits of eviscerating damage. The second part of the ability makes the passive even more interesting. If Kharn has already defeated an enemy in battle, then at the start of his next turn, he automatically moves up to 2 hexes towards the nearest enemy unit, and then deals 4 eviscerating damage hits if he is in melee. However, if Kharn cannot reach the enemy in melee combat, he will instead move and attack an ally instead. There is a lot of complexity behind these active and passive abilities, so I wanted to break them down using some gameplay examples. In this first clip, we can simply demonstrate how the active works. 3 enemies are within range, and I've set them all to have low health. Kharn uses his active and bam, everyone dies. Cool, nothing too unexpected here. In the second clip, we have an enemy in melee range and another one at 2-hex range. Despite killing the first unit with the first piercing hit of the active ability, you still get to use the plasma hit at 2-hex range, despite the second part of the ability not having any melee targets. The next question or nuance really is how many attacks does this count as? Increasingly, there are abilities and traits in the game that care about how many times a unit has been attacked. For this example, we have some World Eater on World Eater action to give us the answer. When Kharn uses his active ability on Asgore, we can see that Asgore only gains a single stack of his passive ability, demonstrating that Kharn's active only counts as a single attack when it is done against 1 target. Let's move on to his passive ability next. The first part of the Betrayer lets Kharn automatically attack after he has performed his basic attack. For this footage, I've got a bunch of Diamond 3 Necrons and downscaled Kharn all the way to the bottom so we can get multiple attacks in for the same footage. You'll note here that regardless of who I hit with the initial attack, Kharn always seems to circle back and attack Makotep on the second passive strike. I'm not entirely clear what the conditions for the passive are, making it preferentially target Makotep, but there is something in the behavior that makes it predictable, as you can see here in this footage. Next, we'll bring Asgore back to check how many attacks this counts as. As we can see through the gameplay footage, this time Kharn's attack plus his passive ability trigger count as 2 separate attacks. Let's add in the second part of the passive now. When we kill this Necron warrior, we'll get this new buff icon underneath Kharn, showing that he has the Betrayer effect. At the start of Kharn's next turn, he automatically moves and makes an attack against an enemy. Probably the most similar way to describe this is that Kharn behaves like a summon at the start of his turn and moves and attacks before you're able to take actions with your playable characters. Again, here, the obvious question seems to be, what is Kharn's pattern or preference when he makes this attack? Here we have used the same 3 Necrons as before, and again he always seems to be going for Makotep. In this clip we can see that the Necrons decide to get away from the bloodthirsty World Eater champion, and as a result Kharn attacks his own homeboy Asgore for a few turns. When there are no available targets for Kharn's bloodthirst, then he runs towards the closest enemy. Okay, so we've talked through his abilities. Let's run the numbers on just how strong they are. His active ability does a ton of damage. For reference, a Diamond 3 character has an average armor of 1930 and an average health of 8300. We have to do a fair bit of math to work out the end Damvar here, because each attack has a different attack type and pierce ratio. Damvar is explained on the right hand side of the screen. After putting Kharn's active ability through the Damvar calculation, a blue star level 50 active ability does 11,678 damage, more than enough to destroy an enemy character of equivalent Diamond 3 rank. The beauty of this sort of calculation is you can scale those numbers down to any difficulty you want, and see that offensively, this active ability is an absolute powerhouse and will kill any equivalent average character. What I really like about this particular ability though is that the damage isn't wasted, so if the piercing part of the attack or the eviscerate part of the attack kills an enemy unit, then the remaining damage spills over to other enemies. Given that the active ability is almost guaranteed to kill an enemy unit, you're also then going to get to take advantage of his powerful passive ability with bonus hits on your next turn. This is just the active ability, by the way. In case it hasn't become already obvious to you, Kharn is a melee character by virtue of only having melee attacks on his base kit. So that means that Kharn's powerful active ability will also synergize with Ragnar Blackmane's War Howl, allowing you to obliterate multiple enemies even if you have to punch up in Guild War. On this screen are the stats at Silver 1 and Gold 1 to compare with Diamond 3, and the accompanying ability levels for these breakpoints. I've included these here as these are the breakpoints for epic and rare characters in Guild War combat. The character is summarized on screen in my usual infographic style. His numbers on the right are at Diamond 3. Tawin, Tacticus Ambassador and Friend, has run those comparatively against the existing characters in the game. Kharn's PvP damage stat is the highest in the game against a standardized target with average stats. His health and armor stats are on the 69th and 65th centile respectively. I suppose the main talking point about Kharn's usefulness or his ceiling of power is around his passive ability. On paper, Kharn is able to do 12 hits every turn, which is more than any other single character in the game at the moment. You would think that would make him an easy fit to the multi-hit team, or make him an obvious choice to take along with characters that provide damage buffs. However, the problem is that the attacks generated by his passive ability are not able to be buffed by things like Calgar's passive. We have a very small pool of abilities that can buff Kharn's passive. What are they, and how might they allow him to fit in and influence the meta? Well, the good news is that Eldrion's passive, Doom, works on all of Kharn's attacks and abilities. Beyond that, Athana's passive, while not increasing the damage, does increase the critical hit chance of Kharn's passive. Asgore is the other big one, and if you watch my Asgore showcase, you'll understand how this passive ability buffs other character abilities as well. So yes, Asgore's passive would work with Kharn's passive. We can try and shoehorn some teams together in Guild Raid to see what a Kharn team might look like. The Avatar of Cain is an obvious showcase example. On the test build at the moment, I only have the Avatar of Cain at Epic 1. Here we are using Diamond 3 characters. There are plenty of summons to allow you to trigger the World Eater passives, and the fire hexes that are omnipresent on the Avatar fight increase the stacks of Asgore's passive quickly. You can see how we get to a maximum stacks of Asgore's passive pretty quickly and easily, and his damage bonuses conferred to all of Kharn's attacks, both his normal attack and Kharn's passive attacks. If there's one boss where I think there's potential for the two World Eaters to shine, it is probably the Avatar of Khaine because of how easy it is to build up stacks on Asgore here. I'm not sure if it's the top meta, but watch this space. I'm sure I'll have a couple of guildmates who want to try this combination out in the future. In theory, adding 1200 damage to all of 12 hits every round of battle, on top of Eldrion's passive and potentially even high ground, does leave you a very high ceiling of damage. The other boss with summons and a relatively easy way of triggering the passive of Asgore is the Screamer Killer. Again, at the moment I only have the Screamer Killer on the test build at Epic 2, so here we kill a couple of Hormagaunts and gain the high ground. We're able to gain a few stacks on Asgore's passive to further buff Kharn's overall damage. I'm pretty clear in my mind that this team doesn't do as much damage against the Screamer Killer as the mech team, but it looks to be an okay substitute in the multi-hitter comp if you're dead set on using Kharn in your team. I sadly don't have the Rogal Dorn boss as an available boss at the moment on the test build, so I can't showcase him here, but I would guess that he's pretty decent there too. You can use the active to kill some guardsmen or mortars fairly easily and then chase the tank around the map and get lots of bonus hits against the rear armor. If I had to theorize a team against the battle tank, this is probably what I would run. aun'shi, Eldrion, Aethana, Ragnar and Kharn. Again, watch this space and I'll let you know how effective Kharn is as a substitute for Calgar in this team and for this boss. All said and done, where do I think Kharn fits into the game at the moment? I've already highlighted potential usefulness in Guild Raid in a multi-hit style team, either with Asgore against the Avatar of Khaine or against Rogal Dorn and taking multiple hits against his rear armor. Beyond that, I think it's pretty clear that Kharn is going to be an absolute monster in PvP. His active will delete an equivalent unit, spill damage onto a nearby enemy, and then trigger another set of high damage passive attacks for the remainder of the fight. I'm personally building him up as a priority to add to my Guild War teams and roster, and hopefully I can use him in raids too. Alright, that was a pretty lengthy deep dive on Kharn. What about how you unlock him? Kharn unlocks via Legendary Release Event. Long-time players of the game will be familiar with this event type, but I'll briefly summarize it here. You play in an event that runs over the course of a week and battle increasingly more difficult levels of enemies to earn points. These points unlock chests, which eventually will unlock the legendary character for you. The levels are divided into 3 groups or tracks: Alpha, Beta and Gamma, each with their own unique enemies to fight as well as restrictions on who you can bring along in battle. These legendary release events are endgame content. It's supposed to be difficult and require a deep and wide roster of characters, so don't be too disheartened if you don't unlock Kharn straight away. The event will recur, running a total of 3 times, and your progress is saved between runs. You generally have to fully clear about 8 levels of the Alpha, Beta and Gamma tracks in order to fully unlock a character on first attempt. That requirement is brought closer to 6 levels if you pay for the 2 unlock offers. The only other thing to add this time is that Snowprint have added a few more difficulty levels to the Legendary Release event, levels 13 and 14. These levels are an opportunity to earn extra points, so for example if you have an ultra powerful mechanical team, you can clear some additional levels and earn some additional points instead of trying to squeeze out points with an underpowered flame team. If you complete all the tracks in all of the levels, there are some bonus chests for you to open. These chests earn you high level rewards like gold, legendary badges and legendary orbs. Feel free to pause and slow this down, but I've just run through the current tracks and restrictions. I'm running through everything quite quickly here on screen, but I've also summarized everything on the next slide for your own ease. I've also got a link to a Google Sheet where you can see all of the characters currently in the game and filter them by trait to see how many overall points they score you. There's also an excellent web resource called the Tacticus Planner, which gives you the same information with a bit more flair than my bare bones Google Sheet. Sorry to rush through that last segment, but I don't like extending these videos unnecessarily. Hopefully you found all of that useful. If you enjoyed this and my other content, I'd love if you could consider entering my referral code as seen on screen. It earns you 100 Blackstone and supports me in the work that I do. It is single use though, so choose who you support carefully. Bye for now.
Doo-doo-dee. It's Nandi!